Good morning to everyone joining us from Ateneo de Manila University, partner institutions, local government and community networks, civil society, academic spaces, and climate action communities across the Philippines and beyond. Welcome to integrating nature-based solutions and biodiversity into local climate action. This is the launching of the ADMU Field School for Climate Resilient Communities. I'm Joshua Vidal, the founder of the school's Climate Action Project and the research associate of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, Ateneo de Manila University. It is my honor to serve as your moderator for today's gathering. Before we formally begin, may I invite everyone to take note of a few house rules for today's Zoom session. Please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. Questions may be sent through the Zoom chat box at any point during the presentations. When posting a question, kindly indicate the speaker or reactor to whom your question is addressed. Please use respectful and constructive language in all comments and exchanges. The session will be documented for reporting, communication, and educational purposes. For technical concerns, kindly message the host or organizing team through the chat box. To open and frame our conversation, we are honored to welcome Dr. Emma Porio. Dr. Emma Porio is a lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and serves as the project leader and principal investigator of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines project at the Ateneo de Manila University. Her work has long connected climate risks, cities, social vulnerability, governance, and community resilience. This morning, Dr. Porio will help us situate the vision, rationale, and pathways of the ADMU Field School for Climate Resilient Communities within the broader challenge of local climate action. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Emma Porio.
Thank you very much, Josh, and thank you very much to everyone here who are joining us from Bangkok, from other places like in Bohol, in Iloilo, Cebu, and Bataan, and other places here and abroad. The title of my presentation, Responding to the Climate Crisis, the ADMU School, a field school integrating nature-based solutions and biodiversity into local climate action. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to do initiatives like this? Because the Earth is in crisis because of the activities that we're doing as a human being. If you look here in the planetary boundaries initiated or calculated by Jack Rostrom and colleagues, you can see that we have really crossed the three boundaries. One, that the rate we are losing our biodiversity loss, we are going to have some ecosystem collapse. Number two, the climate change, human interference with the nitrogen cycle. So those are the three things. And at the rate we are losing our biodiversity, it can lead to ecosystem collapse. To maintain the functional integrity, Jack Rostrom and the others are saying that we should have in our human modified landscapes, like our cities and communities, we should have at least 20 to 30% of diverse semi-natural habitat, including native species, and in each square kilometer in our cities and communities and other human modified landscapes. What are human modified landscapes? Our cities, our communities, human settlements, agricultural regions, and the others. So we have really modified them and their functional integrity to function in providing the multiple contributions, provisioning multiple local contributions to the people, food, energy, water. We really have crossed the boundaries, and they're saying that to restore the functional integrity, we should have that kind of 20 to 30% semi-natural habitat so that it can do its work. Today's full crisis, climate and social inequality, economic crisis, energy, food, and water, is rooted in the great imbalance in the way we human beings have extracted resources from the earth, our only home and the only planet that we know is habitable. At the rate we are consuming the earth's resources, we would have 3 planets to sustain our lifestyle. If you can see here, in Asia, there are the cities with the highest environmental crisis in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. In Asia, Manila really is there, but if you look at all of this, if you look at the IPCC assessment, you will see that the key risks that we are experiencing, the floods, sea level rise, heat, urban extreme rain, drought, and the others, and especially now, we will have the longest drought and worst drought in history, as I said. If you look at below, we cannot track the progress of our work because not enough people from our universities, from research institutes are really writing about it. So we cannot track the progress in how, institutionally we are responding to these key risks. And that's why for me, I really think that we have to engage the young people, our students, our faculty, and really looking at the risks, the climate and disasters are amidst, and study them. Because I look at the inventory of many courses in our schools, climate and disaster risk is, appears only 1 or 0.00%. So this field school is really an attempt to engage people, to look at their environments, like their campuses, to look at communities and basically study them and connect them to what we can do. As we know, the IPCC report in 2022 said that the twin crisis of our time is really climate and social inequality. Climate change has increased poverty levels, widening inequality, and creating new vulnerabilities. And this twin crisis of our time, climate and social equality, exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, has intensified the vulnerability among those already marginal and disadvantaged communities. And more so now with all the political economic crisis that has resulted into energy crisis, food crisis, and many things. In the Philippines, for example, the climate events, the extreme events are really normalizing widening inequality in metropolitan cities like Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, because our studies in the coastal cities at risk have shown that for every major flooding, cities lose 5 to 30% GDP. Also, the studies of Maharavago and Gemma Norisma in Manila Observatory showed that every typhoon for informal households loses more. So if there are an average of 20 typhoons visiting us, it means that every typhoon, the inequality widens between those who are in high skyscrapers, better off, and those in the informal settlements. If you look at the top 3 global risks by severity, you will see that number 1 is our failure to act in our climate actions. So number 1 is climate action failure, extreme weather and biodiversity loss. And that's the reason that we have to have the coastal cities at risk organize really the school climate action program in partnership with other schools and other communities and other actors. So the ADMU Field School envisions a socially and ecologically resilient future in the Philippines and the ASEAN region, where local communities, university governments, and civil society collaboratively address climate risk while restoring biodiversity and ecological integrity. It seeks to foster landscapes and communities capable of sustaining both human well-being and ecosystem wealth. So basically for 2026 and 2028, we have 3 major school climate action projects. One with the ADMU Field School. I'll talk about more in detail later. Second is the CCARPH Schools Climate Action Project with senior high schools and the food gardens and the senior high school DRM course. For example, we have partners with the Center for Positive Futures Laudato Si program, Center for Positive Futures in Puerto Princesa, in Montalban, Taguig, Nueva Ecija, Rizal, and Laguna. We've also started with the SICAR NRSC Schools Climate Action Project with public-private sector partners. For example, Vivant Foundation, which is our partner in Cebu, has this greening program with the solarization program, and also the SICAR PH in partnership with NRC and Vivant in Mandawi Comprehensive High School. So, in a sense, from us here, the Ateneo de Manila is its journey of Laudato Si, to become a Laudato Si University from 2023 to 2030. And the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, represented here by Theo Kayan, is leading the whole integral ecology journey that we're having. So if you'll see here, these are the beautiful mountains of the San Mateo. Sid and I, we had field work there looking at the windmill energy project in Tanay and the like. So Ateneo Field School is very much of three sites. In the three sites, basically, in Ateneo de Manila Loyola Campus, in Calawis, Antipolo City and Mount Nature Reserve, and then Payatas Biodiversity Park, with Payatas Barangays Council and the local government of Quezon City. I would say that, we are very much lucky that we're able to partner with other departments in this campus, as well as we have 5 courses, and I will talk about that in detail briefly a bit later. So 3 undergrad courses and 2 graduate SOAN MDRR courses. So the Ateneo de Manila has just launched their Master Sustainability Plan. We also have the Climate Action Plan headed by Father Jose Ramon Villarin, Executive Director of the Manila Observatory. And then Biodiversity Plan headed by Dr. Eman De Locado, represented here by Theo Kakayan this morning. And then the AIS, Environmental Science and Dawn Satombaga, is looking at biocultural diversity together with the Chinese Studies Program, represented here by Sydney Bata and Harvin Ang, on nature-based solutions. And this is in the Science and Technology course of the Chinese Studies Program. In Calawis, Antipolo City and Mount Nature Reserve, Dr. Lisa Lim and Jiho Lanyog of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, and Dr. Lisa Lim as Director of ISO, is having the Ateneo Social and Cultural Laboratory 1 and the Ateneo Social Cultural Laboratory 2. The third, but not the last, me with my SOAN 223, which is System Thinking or Risk Governance, and SOCDEV 283, which is Risk Governance and Systems Thinking. We'll be doing it with my graduate students in partnership with the Payatas Barangay School, as well as with the Climate and Sustainability Division headed by Andrea Villaroman. In their localization of the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan into local Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan of Quezon City, which is a C40 city. So altogether, hopefully, we're able to inventory the climate and disaster risks that are visiting these communities, as well as inventory the existing nature-based solutions, as well as some biodiversity conservation initiatives. Especially in the Payatas Biodiversity Park, this used to be a landfill, and in fact, I used to do my studies of street children and urban poor housing in Payatas. After the trash light, it was renovated, but recently it has been converted into Payatas Biodiversity Park. So this is one initiative wherein the local government is really trying to preserve or conserve its biodiversity so that the community resilience situation will be better. So the core goals of the Ateneo Field School is one, to mainstream nature-based solutions and biodiversity into climate action. As I was talking to the faculty, I said, number one, I want the ordinary Atenean, or at least our students, to understand why nature-based solutions is very important and why understanding nature and biodiversity is very important. Because in my experience interacting with the young people here, a lot of us are really disconnected from nature. We really do not think of nature's health and the ecosystem as very important into our well-being and health in this universe. Second, we intend to strengthen the social ecological resilience studies. Number three, we want to advance a place-based learning and research. I find in my experience that when I take students to the three flood basins or to the upland development, I find that they tend to understand more why urbanization result into increased flooding of the city. I remember Father Balchan and I were taking our students. Father Balchan had his theology and environment, and I had my cities and climate as class, and we were showing them into the Laguna Lake and the West Manghan floodway, and also with the mountains, and was so struck that after, the reflection, one of the students said, "Oh, I didn't realize that the business of my parents, which is developing subdivisions, is contributing to the flooding of the city." So place-based learning and research is very important in terms of for students and for people in the community to realize what is their contribution to the flooding as well as to the preservation of the place so that it can respond more proactively in terms of climate and disaster risk hitting their communities. Number four, we really want to promote partnerships and collective action because it's only by being together, by working together in the same direction, that we can really promote community resilience, innovations, and possibilities in our cities and communities. And number five, we want to cultivate future climate leaders, leaders that are conscious how climate will affect development initiatives and the like. For example, the El Nino started in May, but we already know that El Nino will be very strong. But I'm really struck that the preparation, the anticipatory action that we expect from our leaders and from our decision makers are not there. So we are launching this one, and you can see the major actors responsible for a biodiversity plan and the climate action plan and a master sustainable plan are here. So I would like to show to you the lead partner institutions and resource faculty of the Ateneo Field School, led by Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, Dr. Emmanuel de Glocado, Daniel Ratella, and Abi Fabis, the Environmental Science by Dr. Milet Mendoza and Don Sandobaga, Chinese Studies Program, Dr. Sidney Kaswarbata and Harvin Ang, Ateneo Innovation Center with Paul Kabakungan, Greg Tangon, and Toby Dairit, and Sociology Anthropology with Dr. Lisa Lim, Jiho Lenog, and myself. And then, of course, there's Father Jet Villarin of Manila Observatory. He chaired the Climate Action Plan of the Ateneo de Manila. And then the Arete Sandbox Collab by Dr. Skilty Labastilla. And Skilty Labastilla did his master's studies in Payatas when Payatas was still a landfill. So it is very important for him to revisit the Payatas Biodiversity Park now. The arts program is Smile Indias and Laura Cabuchan. And we have two artists in resident, Father Jason Lee, who is now in London doing his speech, and Shashi Bugnot, who is responsible for all the artwork that the CCARPH have. And then, of course, I consulted with Dr. Achut Koyiging. So let me basically say that the coastal cities at risk at this moment in time, we ended our, active researching field work and the like in 2022 and 23. But now the stage where as I promised, we will institutionalize the gains of the coastal cities at risk, for example, and this is one of them, the integrating biodiversity and nature-based solutions into our local climate action plan. That could be our part of it is our curriculum, as well as at the same time more so at the local government unit, wherein they're supposed to do their local biodiversity action strategy plan. The Philippine Biodiversity Action Plan was really promulgated in 2016. But until now, I find that very few people, very few LGUs have really localized the Biodiversity Action Strategy Plan. This was one of our institutionalizing effort by focusing on technologies for anticipatory action, innovations, and climate and disaster resilience. In every conference we always have an exhibit, because I find that science is best communicated in pictures and illustrations and images. I can remember that in 2018, when we launched the Coastal Cities at Risk 2, and I just gave Dr. Ricky Abad and Yael Camino the 160 pages report, and they just translated that into 20 panels. This is very excellent. So I really think that the new way that we're working now, it should involve everybody with its own charisma and talents, contributing to innovative, transformative solutions. Okay. So let me close by quoting Pope Francis. He says, "The universe unfolds in God, who fills it completely. Here is a mystical meaning to be found in a leaf, in a mountain trail, in a dewdrop, and a poor person's face." Pope Francis, Laudato Si, 1936, 2025. I believe we should impress and act on this saying to all those people who believe that the earth is our only home, and all our activities has been responsible for the warming of the earth, for the extreme floods and the like, and therefore, good children of the universe and of God, we should really do our best to restore the integrity of our home. You can download everything from our website. Just acknowledge us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Porion, for that important framing. Your message reminds us that climate resilient communities are not built only through projects or policies, but through sustained learning, partnership, and grounded engagement with the realities of people and ecosystems. We now proceed to our first key presentation. Once again, thank you so much. Let us welcome Father Jet Filiarin.
Good morning. I welcome this field school. Actually, the launch of this field school. There are so many things you can learn actually on the ground, even here on a campus like Ateneo. Yung halimbawa, no, nung nagkaroon ng heat wave dito, I would sometimes just walk around, and there is really, for example, we have a little forest. Ano ba yun? Tawag nila JG Song Forest ba yun? Or whatever. There is a place here where you have a lot of trees. And if you go through that, and I was, bicycling through that forest, especially in the weekends, there is an appreciable decrease in air temperature. It's cooler. It's cooler. And then, if you also look at the church, the Jesu, it's on a hill and it's surrounded by trees. And then at the foot of the hill is a road na may kanal. Usually, yung mga daan naman natin, may mga kanal yan eh. And when it would rain, of course, the canal would have water flowing. Just keep flowing, even if the rains had stopped already. So I wonder, saan galing yung tubig? Diba? Wala nang ulan, pero bakit meron pa rin dumadaloy na tubig? And it's because, the trees, the grass, they act like a sponge. Anyone who has long hair knows this, that if you have long hair, after you take a bath, it takes a while to dry your hair. Kasi ang daming tubig eh. And it just keeps flowing and flowing. And so right there, you have a teaching aid to tell people, look, this is, this is what forests do. They actually regulate our water supply. You take out the forest, kalbuhin mo yung bundok, there will be flash floods. Yung kanal na yan will have a strong surge of water and then wala na, tapos. Hindi dahan-dahan yung pagdaloy ng tubig. Another instance is, for example, at the Manila Observatory, last year kasi birthday ko, sabi ko, sige, magtanim tayo. And of course, we discovered that the ground is not good. It's adobe. And so we had to, we realized that things will not grow here. Now there are trees, there's grass, there's a, well, that took a while. But if you were going to plant kamatis, okra, you cannot plant on very rocky ground. And so we had to get compost from the grade school. We were grateful. They had compost and some natural chemicals that they had collected, and that enabled us to grow. Enabled the garden to grow. However, okay, and this was really just an exercise for our people to get their hands dirty with the ground. I was telling them, no, let's look for termite hills, maghukay tayo at lahat. After 1 year, you can see that wala na. Again, you see, ningas go good. Then you realize, what happened? Why? How come? You started something, and then how come it's lying fallow again? What happened? Was there some organizational failure? Was there some policy gap? How come it's not something we sustain? I thought a vegetable garden was something we needed. I thought a vegetable garden would something.
You talk to Burns about, because you're supposed to.
Hey, sorry, Emma. Okay, forget now. Vegetable garden is supposed to be something that we could actually, I guess, give, especially in a time of hunger. Anyway, so thank you for this opportunity to be part of this field school. And my role today is just to give you an overview of the Climate Action Plan. For this, I'm grateful to Daniel Retilla of the ES Department and so many others, the team who've labored over this plan for more than a year now. How do I just want to go through this just to contextualize. Alam na natin to. I think we've seen this. I mean, this is how I sort of try to understand the crisis. That accelerating growth has led to waste, which has led to hazards, which in turn have generated all these risks, which imperil our growth. So it's something that's all connected. And I guess the response here is to look at what can we do about. I don't think it's difficult to stop growth, and maybe we can grow more wisely. But what we can do is perhaps decouple the waste from the growing, and see if we could do something about the risk. So Pilipinas, what are we worried about? Actually, it's sea level. Now, sea level is just for us, can be abstract. I mean, we have high tide, low tide. We see the sea level always rising every day and also subsiding. But what we really sometimes miss is that the sea level is highest actually in this part of the world, the Western Pacific. And if it's large, then the change will also be large. I mean, even if it's a small percentage, but if the base is already high, then of course a fraction of that baseline will also be consequently high. Sea level is not just warmth. I mean, yes, sea level is not just height, but it's also warmth, because warm waters actually expand. And if you are if you're a fisher, I mean, fisher folk understand this. When the sea is warm, the fish are gone. Coral reefs also die when sea warms, when sea temperatures rise. We are familiar with storms, and they're getting more intense over the years. We're seeing this very dramatic, and of course, with warmer climate, we will look at extremes in water deficits, and of course surpluses, and it will be uneven. There'll be areas that will experience dryness, and other areas will be actually experiencing a lot of water. I mentioned this already about heat waves, about I mean over sea, but we are more familiar with heat waves over land. But I think it's also something that we need to look at because we are surrounded by a lot of water. This can worsen hunger. This can already worsen our already fragile land and sea ecosystems and social inequity and conflict. Our usual frame for understanding this is to look at hazard, exposure, vulnerability. That's risk. Risk is a probability. Risk is future oriented. So it's a gamble in a way, and we try to look at possibilities and probabilities of certain events. And I use this graphic from Hokusai, a Japanese woodprint artist who always has Mount Fuji in the background. This is the Great Wave, and you can see here varying hazards, meaning by varying heights of the wave, and you see different canoes or bangkas facing these waves. And for us, exposure is really if you're in direct path of that, and vulnerability will depend on your social cohesion, even the strength of your boat, etc. If those who are in the boat together are actually if they know each other, if they care for each other, etc. So it's really just a metaphor for us to understand vulnerability. If you want to be mathematical about it, here's a Venn diagram. Three sets intersecting, and that risk is right there. And the goal is to really bring down the risk. What we should do, and here's how we frame the climate action program is really, well, you need to bring down the hazard, and to bring down the hazard, you need to bring down carbon, which is the cause of rising temperatures. That's technically called mitigation. On the other two factors, exposure, vulnerability, if you want to bring down exposure, which is really to move people out of harm's way, then that we put that under adaptation. Decreasing one's vulnerability as well is called adaptation. One index of vulnerability is, for example, how isolated an individual or even a community is. So we look at that. We look at disconnections. We look at connections. Just an example. For mitigation, you look at sources and removals. You look at energy, land, and water resources. Exposure, you move people out of harm's way. You have to look at housing. You look at land use, public health. For vulnerability, we look at our own social systems, economic, our livelihood, our education, health. We look at risk transfer, our risk management, insurance, etc. We look at all these social safety nets. So I'm just giving you an overall view. Here, as when we want to address climate, we have to look at, of course, how things vary and how, for example, growth is differentiated. There are communities, there are individuals, there are countries that are growing faster than some, and therefore their waste footprint is also differentiated. And so we look at differentiated responsibilities as a matter of accountability. And that's why we have to be careful about transitions, how we do this. How can we transition to a climate safe world? We have to be careful about the impact of our actions. So back to the main part I want to share with you is the climate action plan. And here we started with, of course, trying to, what's the climate risk of the campuses? The Ateneo has 4 campuses, actually. The main one is here in Loyola Heights, but there are other campuses in Salcedo, in Ortigas, and in Rockwell. The maps follow these hazards, rain extremes, when you have a lot of it, surplus, and when you have less of it, deficit, drought, strong winds, and heat waves. It's based on a modified community, the CDRA, parang climate disaster risk assessment, which actually our local governments are asked to do. So what we've done is to look at top-down data from international and government sources, from research, and then we integrate this with bottom-up information from those who are directly affected, those who've been affected, so from the stakeholders. It's important that this plan incorporates both structural, systemic change and personal climate conversion. That's important. I mean, these two. Hindi mo pwedeng paghiwalay yun. We know that personal conversion is so important because it can lead to systemic change, pero at the same time, it's not enough. Sometimes, parang chicken and egg to it. We'll also have to look, of course, at the structural and, if I may say, even cultural. Okay. The action plan of the Ateneo covers 7 areas: energy, food, waste, buildings, land, mobility, health. And the 3 can be clustered around what we call resource management. It's how we manage resources. The 4 fall under socio-environmental design, meaning how we shape our environment and how that environment also shapes us. So buildings, the way we allocate our land and green spaces, etc. And of course, here in Ateneo, as in Manila, Metro Manila, our problem is mobility. One of our main problems is traffic. And I think that's a wicked problem. That's very difficult to solve, but we cannot not solve it. And so we have to continue really hammering away and looking how to solve this issue. Cutting across all these 7 is education and formation. The Climate Action Plan has 5 goals, 8 targets, 51 strategies, and 75 initiatives. I know, and these cover infrastructure, policy, education, and research-related areas. But I think those 75 flow from those 5 goals. I wanted to point out here that the CAP is a living document. It's not never static. It's something that will continually evolve. We know that based on feedback, based on review. And the participatory mechanisms are, pastoral, I don't know. For us, we really mean synodal. It's consultative, it's participatory, it's also bottom-up. Because we can learn from those who are directly actually affected, and they have something also to contribute. The CAP is designed to be sensitive to the different contexts of the units. If you have a medical school, they have different concerns. If you have a law school in Makati, they have another context, etc. And it strives to adopt a whole of community approach. We also, in this plan, we will have a climate action tracker as an accountability and feedback mechanism. That means, regularly coming together and saying, "Oh, kamusta na? Oh, where are we? Are we making progress? Are we slowing down in some areas?" And I think that this is important. For now, it's not yet done. Consultations are still ongoing for both the climate action and the biodiversity action plans. No? In fact, there is one this on the 25th now, according to Daniel. This is my last slide. This is just to summarize. This is the frame. Again, you have those 7 thematic areas at the center, energy, and they're actually underpinned by these 4 guiding principles to the left. And the 5 goals are here to the right. So that's the goal. At the end of the middle becomes carbon neutral, meaning we look at our energy systems, energy conservation, and if I may add, energy efficiency, increased carbon removal capacity, and well, also greenhouse gas carbon emissions especially from our vehicles. The second goal is to promote low carbon food systems. Third is ecological solid waste management and climate resilient. The fourth is a climate resilient infrastructure. And lastly, that it fosters a climate resilient and healthy community. So I end there, and thank you for listening. This is a work in progress, and I hope that we can learn more, from starting this field school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Jet, for that thoughtful and compelling presentation. The ADMU Climate Action Plan shows how institutions can move from commitment to implementation and from aspiration to accountable pathways for climate leadership. Okay, now let's move on to the next presentation about biodiversity as a foundation for local climate resilience. On behalf of Dr. Emmanuel De Lucado, as he is now on the field research, may we call on Mr. Theo Cakayan, the program head of Ateneo Institute and Sustainability of Ateneo de Manila University. Good morning, Sir Theo.
Hey, good morning, Joshua. Good morning, everyone. Please allow me to share my slides. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name again is Theo Cakayan. I'm the program head for organizational sustainability at AIS. AIS really is, I'm representing Dr. Eman De Lucado, who's currently on field, as mentioned. And really, AIS, our mission is really to promote integral ecology and a culture of sustainability and resilience across the university and its partners through incubating and mainstreaming innovative practices. No? So organizational sustainability is one of the programs under AIS, alongside climate disaster resilience and sustainable development goals. So today I'll be talking about the Biodiversity Action Plan, which is really an ongoing, an ongoing document that we're going through consultation right now. But before I delve into that, let me just first introduce the Sustainable University Master Plan. So this is a commitment of the Ateneo de Manila University in becoming a sustainable university, wherein we define how a sustainable Ateneo is by acting as a responsible and ecological steward in its operations. It's a resilient and adaptable university, an accessible, inclusive, safe university, promotes and instills health and wellness, financially viable university, a catalyst for nation building, and a leader in sustainability education and ecological spirituality. So the Board of Trustees had already approved this document last November 2025, and this is already an open document available. You can see a QR code at the bottom right corner of the slide, where you can access the full document of the Sustainable University Master Plan. And in this document, we also stated here on, apart from the 7-part definition of a sustainable Ateneo, we also disclose the end states and the goals of each definition, so that how we see how we can envision a sustainable Ateneo de Manila. And part of it, in the first definition, we're in a responsible ecological steward in its operation. We also stated there are some policies and action plans that we can actually develop, or we're developing to further that commitment. And part of that is really the Climate Action Plan, which was discussed earlier by Father Jet, and also the Biodiversity Action Plan. So mainly the Sustainable University Master Plan is like the mother document of everything, wherein that also aligns with our operational guidelines, action plans, and for the university. And a lot of these also comes with short-term, medium, and long-term commitments up until 2050, really wanting us to go further than UN SDGs 2030 commitment as well. Now, for the Biodiversity Action Plan, this is really headed by Dr. Emmanuel De Locado, who is the director of AIS, also part of the Department of Biology, and also the head of the Biodiversity Research Lab. Alongside the core working group is Dr. Lilian Lela Cruz, Ms. Abby Faves, Ms. Trinket Constantino, Ms. Joyce Sobremonte, Mr. Ariel Mendoza, Ms. Luis Tulayba, Ms. Jovelyn Bactad, Ms. Ivan Sanhe, and Mr. Voltaire Banzon. So, and I'm currently heading the secretariat of the document alongside with my program officer and research specialist on biodiversity. So the Biodiversity Action Plan, similar to the Climate Action Plan, it is also a living document of the university to collectively work towards its goals and objectives on biodiversity targets, containing species and ecosystems diversity, nature-human interaction, and ecological education. So it was developed, and the development of the Biodiversity Action Plan started actually in 2022, where we did a lot of benchmarking, particularly in the campus of Ateneo de Manila, which is really 89 hectare land. No? Looking into the different parts of the campus, there are forested areas, there are green spaces in our campus, and we wanted to look into how this actually also affects our campus. Now, and in May 2024, we were able to convene the core working group, which I mentioned earlier, and we also had a lot of initial consultations in 2024. We had also some campus walkthroughs, understanding the different areas of the campus, and how also there the community also relates to our biodiversity. Back in January to February 2025, we were already developing the Sustainable University Master Plan, and we were harmonizing the goals and objectives of that document alongside with the Biodiversity Action Plan. And the first draft was submitted on August 2025. Then we were presenting already to the key offices, revised draft to the core working group, and then starting January onwards, we're already pursuing the presentations and open consultations to university stakeholders. Okay, so what can be found, what's inside the BAP? So there are actually 3 parts of the BAP. So you can find there the front matter, the substantive sections, thematic areas, and implementation is really the meat of the document, wherein we really try to explain the science behind the importance of biodiversity to our socio-cultural interactions, and also how it will be implemented. So we have also stated there goals and targets and action points that the university can do, depending also on the offices, which offices are assigned to proceed with those action points. And then also some governance and updating procedures, and then also some back matter when it comes to glossary, baseline data, and references and appendices. So what are the goals of the BAP? So there are actually 4 thematic areas of the Biodiversity Action Plan, and these are: first is on ecosystems, where we want to protect ecosystem diversity by enhancing connectivity and expanding green spaces and campus. Second is on species, where we ensure no net biodiversity loss and instead cultivate native species proliferation despite biodiversity dynamics. It's important to have a diverse set of species within an area, because they all have a relationship with one another and how they interact also with our biodiversity. Third is on mitigating human activities which threaten biodiversity. As humans, we also have our operations. We have to be mindful with our operations and our behaviors, which can actually interact with our biodiversity as well. And lastly, Ateneo as a living laboratory, where we promote a living lab ethos. So how can this be visualized? So targets would mean that for ecosystem, we want to maintain 55% coherence measure for ecosystem connectivity by 2050. In terms of species, we want to increase species diversity of representative taxa to 200% by 2050, focusing mostly on native, endemic, and resident species on campus here in the Philippines in Manila. Having also 100% of our university infrastructure and operations biodiversity responsive by 2050. And lastly, for living laboratory, incorporating biodiversity and ecosystem services appreciation into curriculum, research, and creative work and innovation. If you notice also that the last one, the target for living laboratory is really a qualitative measure compared to the other 3, because we believe that once we actually develop the first three thematic areas, then we would also be able to see the results of that in our last in the living laboratories. Now, some of it may be a bit too technical, but allow me to also demonstrate on how can actually this be visualized in terms of the biodiversity action plan. So, for example, for ecosystem, since we do want to maintain a 55% coherence measure, which is coming from the Singapore Biodiversity Index, where we want to maximize or connect the connectivity of green spaces in our area. So, we want also to implement that in our campus land use map. Currently in the 89 hectares, around 40% of our areas in the Loyola Heights campus are composed of green spaces, vegetated areas, and forested areas. And we want to maintain the connectivity amongst that. On our other campuses, such as in Rockwell, Salcedo, and Ortigas, they also have a bit of ecosystem or green spaces, but not as big as Loyola Heights. But we do want to emphasize that whatever is stated in the map can also be implemented in future campuses, no, of Ateneo de Manila. Also, we want to, a part of having that 55% coherence measure is also maximizing our tree canopy cover. Currently, we're around 60% tree canopy cover in Ateneo de Manila. We want to maintain that or even increase that further when, of course, once we have actually available spaces. We also want to somehow balance the need for expanding our green spaces when it comes also to our operations, because we are increasing population. So we also need to also have that discernment in identifying which spaces can we expand to green spaces and which spaces can be used for educational and for our students, no, and our faculty. When it comes to species, there are certain ways that how we can actually increase species diversity. So first is through education also, coming up with a species catalog of our fauna and flora. These are actually available in our website and Ateneo de Manila. So we are currently creating our catalog when it comes to fauna or plants and tree species that are available on campus. Also, when it comes to fauna species such as birds, insects, pollinators, those are also included in our website, and we keep a catalog of that. And this is actually a partnership with Ateneo Wild in keeping track of all of these species that we can see in our campus. We are also ongoing with our tree inventory and tagging. Of course, we try to identify all the trees here on campus. We are estimating around 10,000 trees in the Loyola Heights campus alone. And part of that really is understanding which trees are native, non-native, and also invasive. So what we know also how to manage these types of species that we have, flora species that we have. No? And also, of course, at Loyola Heights is also housing our community. We also have community cats in our university. While they are considered to be invasive species, we also do take care of them. We are currently partnering with PAWS, Philippine Animal Welfare Society, wherein we are conducting a TNVR program, or a trap, neuter, vaccinate, release program for our cats. We don't want to also increase their population because they do have a safety risk when it comes to our stakeholders. So, but we just want to manage their population here on campus. When it comes to structures, when I mentioned biodiversity responsive, no, Ateneo de Manila also currently have initiatives when it comes to biodiversity responsive infrastructures. So, for example, in the first one, you'd see here what we call the building wastewater treatment system, wherein wastewater coming from the bathrooms are also being treated before it's being released to natural bodies of water. So, making sure that we are also responsible when it comes to operations, when we don't further pollute nearby water sources along the campus. The second one, you can see here, we also try to maximize our rainwater. So compared to having regular concrete, and then which actually prevents the recharging of groundwater and actually even promotes urban flooding. A lot of our spaces on campus, especially walkways, are porous pavers where it's a layer of bricks, sands, and soil. So the rainwater will be absorbed by the ground, and groundwater is being recharged, which can also help with our ecosystems and green spaces nearby. So that's how we actually become biodiversity responsive with our infrastructure. And also when it comes to waste management, we also have that in terms adhering also to the Republic Act 90303 on Waste Management Act, wherein we also have we categorize our wastes properly, and so that we can also know we segregate them properly, and we can divert our wastes away from landfill, which really creates the greenhouse gases that's really polluting our earth further. And lastly, in living laboratory, we envision this as first advancing research on biodiversity. So Dr. Eman is currently heading the biodiversity research lab, and they are also looking into different insects such as beetles, no? And these are very important also in our ecosystem, and part of identifying these new species. No, they also collaborate with LGUs so that they can also inform them of these critical species that are important in our ecosystem, so that they would know also how to protect them further. When it comes to nature education activities, and I think for those who are part of the ADMU Field School, no, and you'll be some of the instructors and lecturers will also be having a sustainability walk or a nature walk as part of your classes. No, wherein for sustainability walk, you'll be going around the campus and seeing all of the sustainability initiatives. And for nature walk, is having that a space for you to enjoy and to get to know our campus biodiversity further with the resident birds and endemic species that we have here on campus. And of course, we want to also continue our partnership for biodiversity conservation. This particular photo you see is the Arboretum of Threatened Philippine Trees here in Ateneo, which is a partnership of the Energy Development Corporation, their BINHI program, which is a conservation program for threatened trees in the Philippines, and also a donation of the Manlapas family. So we want to also further partnerships, not only within the schools, but also outside organizations, to further our response to the critical biodiversity loss that we're experiencing and climate change. So some acknowledgements on the people who's been working towards the creation of the biodiversity action plan. And of course, as mentioned also by Father Jet earlier, we will be having a public consultation, but this is also limited to Ateneo stakeholders, particularly the higher education students. We're in higher education and basic education rather. We'll be having a public consultation on both the Climate Action Plan and the Biodiversity Action Plan on June 25th. This will be online, and feel free to register at the QR code below if you wish to join this discourse. No? So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you more in this ADMU Field School. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Theo, for emphasizing the role of biodiversity in sustaining resilience. Your presentations make clear that local climate action must be attentive to ecosystems, species, habitat quality, and everyday relationships between communities and nature. Now let us move on to the next part of our program, which is the last presenter about cities and resilience. May I call on Dr. Emma Porio to introduce our next presenter.
Is Sly here? Is already Sly here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
Dr.
hi,
Good
hi,
morning.
Sly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure because Sly is in Bangkok and we met the other day. So Sly Baramida is the Executive Director of the National Resilience Council and our partner in Coastal Cities at Risk. If you notice, Coastal Cities at Risk is a consortium of inter- and transdisciplinary scientists, professionals, and practitioners, mainly between Ateneo de Manila University, Manila Observatory, and the National Resilience Council, our implementing partner. So we're very happy that Sly Baramedi can be here with us, even though he's there, and I think he has to get up early for participating here. So thank you, Sly. I hope you will be able to share with us some of the initiatives that the National Resilience Council is doing in terms of partnering with local governments, private sector partners who are also partnering with schools. And in a sense, in your emphasis now on looking at nature-based solutions and how they can contribute to urban resilience. Thank you very much, Lai. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc Emma. I'm actually honored that you were the one who made the introduction for me. And basically, my role here is not to present anything, but practically to reinforce what has been discussed earlier. And allow me first to thank you, Doc Emma, Father Jet, and our partners for the intellectual generosity and the intellectual leadership. I would also like to congratulate the core group and the team who put together these important pieces of strategies and action plans, the Biodiversity Action Plan and the Climate Change Action Plan. I also recognize that there are some local government units that is attending today, and I believe that the discussions that we are having this morning is very much important and in what we do for our communities and for the society. And indeed, Ateneo de Manila is practically or strategically positioned to really push for a socially and ecologically resilient future. This is a very important contribution that Ateneo is doing. And we believe that we do what we do not because it is required, but because it is the right thing to do. It is just, and it benefits not only ourselves, but also our communities and humanity. So yung nakita natin dito is that the Ateneo Field School, I think, is a very good innovation for an academic institution. And beyond looking at the usual academic practice, the usual research, putting together this type of intervention creates or innovative pathways for socio-ecological resilience. As we all know that building resilience is no longer asking a question on who should be resilient, but how it should be done and what can be done together as partners, together as institutions, in terms of not only integrating nature-based solutions and biodiversity conservation in the curriculum, but also embedding it already in the local climate change risk governance as well as planning. As this, we push for beyond planning, but pushing for actions, meaning actionable agenda, actionable research, as well as actionable investments. So we all know that the whole of society approach is very much important in this. Just the same, I'd like to commend Ateneo for bringing together different departments as well as different courses to come up with these types of innovations. Na tandaan ko yung presentation ni Father Jet emphasizing about differentiated responsibilities. But at the same time, there is a need for shared accountability. So we recognize that expertise reside in each individual in each department. But at the end of the day, the accountability here is shared not only among the academic practitioners, not only sa students, but also sa communities natin. And all of this begins with not really understanding risk, but really owning it. I think the first step is really making ownership happen on the ground sa ating communities. And we believe that even the so-called beneficiary communities are equally accountable also. It's not outside looking in, but influencing the change and the transformation that we wish from the inside. Also, I think the partnerships that is being built here will last not only for a specific exercise, but I think yung binubuo natin dito will really be about influencing the government, national and local, the communities, as well as the private sector. We all know that all of these institutions have specific roles to play, and bringing together and coming up with a transdisciplinary approach beyond research, but in terms of actions and implementation on the ground is key to really ensure that there is resilience building, there is adaptation, as well as there is transformation. the National Resilience Council is basically aligned to the core goals of the Ateneo Field School, and we wish to really continue the partnerships with Manila Observatory, the CCAR-PH, and at the Ateneo de Manila system, and really mainstreaming nature-based solutions and biodiversity in local climate actions. These are two intersecting goals or intersecting agenda, which really are important lalong-lalo na sa ating mga local government units and sa mga communities na kasama sa ating local government units. And what you have started actually is a start in terms of really developing grounded strategies by collaborating with local government units. Hindi lang Quezon City, I think the Ateneo system is located in various local government units in the country. And we hope and we want to support these initiatives through our resilient local government unit programs. And then second is really on strengthening the social and ecological resilience to address the interconnection between the climate crisis. Everybody is, I think, aware at least of the word climate change. And the role of the academic institution really here is to do not only educate the public, but really ensure that the culture of building resilience towards climate change happens and is a conscious effort for everybody. We all know that the issue of climate change intersects with the issues on environmental degradation as well as the social inequalities. So I think you are in the best position to really bring together not only the expertise, but also the stakeholders in really coming up with a collective and co-owned as well as co-created solutions to address these multifaceted issues. And when we talk about risk reduction resilience, indeed, the science goes beyond the hard science of hazard exposure, but it pins down and zeroes in on the science of vulnerabilities, specifically looking at the vulnerable and the marginalized sectors. We all know who they are. But to be specific, I think we really need to do some deep dive in the community and look at the contextual drivers of risk and the area-specific vulnerabilities that drives those risks. Third is on advancing the place-based learning and research. I think you've started with these living laboratories in various campuses. And I think these are sustained. Kumbaga, again, babalikan ko yung sinabi ni Father Jet, yung Ningas Kugon. I think this is a typical Filipino trait, which I think we need to transcend. And by coming together, we hope to really sustain what has been started beyond the planning itself, the researches, and really generate actionable or practical knowledge through deep dive in the communities as well as local government units. And then, of course, the most important part here is the coming together and the co-creation and generation of co-benefits through strategic partnerships and collective action. Indeed, the National Resilience Council is in one or in spirit with you in terms of encouraging collaboration between the academe, the local government units, the PWDs, IPs, LGUs, the private sector, non-government and non-profit entities in coming up with a whole of society approach. I know hindi ito masyadong kailangan ng kumbaga intellectual or academic exercise, but this is really bridging the gap that divides people. This is about establishing the social capital as well as building relationships and siguro ensuring that there is alignment and coherence in our actions. And then lastly, we support the cultivation of future climate leaders through CCAR-PH and through the other initiatives of MO and the Ateneo de Manila University, and ensuring that science and technology innovations are included in the discussions and in the localizations of many plans, strategies, as well as policies that our governance stakeholders are putting to the table. So I think these are very important as well as bright hopes for everybody, and Ateneo leading it by putting together a team, by coming up with a plan, identifying communities, and ensuring that there is transdisciplinarity in approach. I believe and I'm very much confident that this will go a long way in terms of really influencing our local governments and local communities. And to our local government units, I think it is also high time that we maximize the use of these initiatives and this engagement. The value of science and the value of academic inputs is very important. We don't do plan or decisions based on perceptions only, or we don't do it for the sake of having plans, but we do it because we believe that our local communities need it for the future generation. Again, congratulations and thank you very much for having us, the National Resilience Council here. Patuloy natin ito, pagtulong-tulungan, and I really commit to invest time, effort, and furthering our partnerships and strengthening what we have started together in this journey towards creating more transformative pathways for resilience. Magandang umaga po and mabuhay tayong lahat. Salamat.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sly, for bringing the discussion into the realities of cities governance and resilience practice. Your insights remind us that resilience is created through coordination, evidence, leadership, and trust across institutions and communities. At this point in time, we now proceed to our ADMU Field School Resource Faculty. The panel will help us deepen the discussion of authoring disciplinary, institutional, and practice-based reflections on the ADMU Field School, nature-based solutions, biodiversity, and local climate action. To begin, may I respectfully call on Mr. Daniel C. Ratilla, the Program Head for Climate and Disaster Resilience, Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, Ateneo de Manila University, and the Lecturer of Department of Environmental Science of the Ateneo de Manila University.
Thank you very much, Josh, for introducing me to get this started as one of the reactors and sharers for today's webinar. And of course, thank you as well to Dr. Emma Porio for convening us. The speakers whom we have heard from today have spoken about the many different plans, the different values, but also the different principles that we hope to surface and nurture in our community. And so I thank my colleagues as well for the opportunity to speak on behalf, not just of the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, but also to get the ball rolling for the other reactors who will also be speaking after me. The polycrisis that we face now, not just of the climate crisis, but also of the biodiversity crisis and social inequality, are really symptoms of how we have charted or chosen to create our relationship with creation. And although we've heard about different documents that are seemingly separate, and even the launch of our field school today, all of these efforts have really come together to attempt to use different levers of change to spark what we might call ecological conversion in the language of Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si. Father Villarin earlier mentioned our collaboration for the Ateneo Climate Action Plan, and this process has really helped us to emphasize the importance of a multi-sectoral approach to addressing climate risk, where we as researchers not only rely on the top-down resources, the top-down voices that are very safe or are very convenient to use, but also in acknowledging the expertise of our stakeholders and really nurturing a bottom-up approach to understanding our climate risk. The action plan, once officially released, will feature different levers of change across different scales and methods, not only through systems and infrastructure, and not only through individuals, but also through integrating nature-based solutions. We do not stop, of course, at the infrastructural because we can have all the best, all of the smartest, and even the greenest infrastructure on hand. But if we do not also look at the formation and education of our stakeholders, these can really just end up as decoration. And so doing so also calls for us to practice humility as researchers, humility to acknowledge that we are just one agent among many, that expertise is everywhere, and that context truly matters if we are to practice research as a form of care. Care not just for our human stakeholders, but also for other forms of creation. I looked at the roster of partner institutions and resource faculty that was presented earlier by Dr. Borio, and I couldn't help but feel great excitement at the collaboration and really the synergy of the interdisciplinary nature of our colleagues, as this really underscores the integrated approach to the polycrisis that we face. Mainstreaming nature-based solutions alongside this interdisciplinary approach and alongside ecological conversion is perhaps a way forward for us to also mainstream a kinder relationship with our common home and also with our fellow creation. And so nature-based solutions, one can say, are a way for us to practice humility. I've mentioned the word humility already in my intervention, but here I talk about humility in acknowledging our limitations as human actors through relinquishing a fraction of the control that we are so obsessed with and really allowing the natural processes that we observe and that we have studied for centuries to solve some of the many problems that we have unleashed onto creation. And so this is perhaps what ecological conversion also means. The capacity to see and treat creation not just as not as something to subdue, but as something to steward and care for. Not as something to control, but as something to collaborate with in creating kinder, but also sustainable and resilient systems. Thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to meeting some of you in our field school.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that very good thought and insightful talk for us this morning. To proceed with our ADMU Field School Resource Faculty talk, may I call on Mr. Dr. Sidney Christopher Bara, the Professor of Chinese Language and Culture, ASEAN in Focus, Ateneo de Manila University.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Good day, Father Jet, Ems, Theo, Sly, Josh, and colleagues. Great to be part of this Ningas Bao team. Just to counter Ningas Kogon, we are with the Ningas Bao team. The big question is, why is China executing the world's largest push into the nature-based solutions? It comes down to several of them. One of them is ideology. Under the ecological civilization, or Shengtai Wenming, China shifted away from the pollute first model, thereby elevating environmental health to a core pillar of national governance. Next is the terrible urban flooding it has right now through the innovative sponge city concept. Concrete jungles are being retrofitted with wetlands and rain gardens to capture massive rainwater and fight its own severe water scarcity. Another is climate survival. To achieve its target of carbon neutrality by 2060. China relies on massive nature-based solutions like the Great Green Wall and its coastal mangrove restorations to lock away millions of tons of CO2. Further is land restoration. The large-scale vegetation projects are actively reversing decades of catastrophic soil degradation, holding back or reversing desertification and protecting food security. Lastly, China is proving that nature isn't an obstacle to growth, it is infrastructure for the future. So let me briefly discuss the significance of our on-campus field school and how this localized approach transforms how our Chinese studies students engage with our science and technology course. First, when it comes to nature-based solutions research, our school campus is a good living laboratory, as mentioned already by Father Jet and Theo earlier. We don't need to move far to understand ecological systems. By conducting our field school right inside the school, our students can inspect the physical layout of our campus, observing the water flow patterns. We also have to double check if we are allowed to do it when it's raining. Identifying the wetlands and evaluating soil health or movement. It moves NBS from an abstract or alien concept to an immediate reality. It prompts students to ask questions: how does our campus environment handle ecological stress, and what are the other concerns we have in our own area? Second, this practical approach is impactful for teaching science and technology to Chinese study students because it connects major regional concepts to hands-on practice within a short semester. Instead of just reading about mainland China's massive eco-governance projects or its theories and policies alone, students will analyze how foundational Chinese NBS frameworks like Sponge City and Haimian Shengshi concepts or urban wetlands can be adapted on a micro scale for places here in the Philippines. In the semesters, our students can work on realistic, achievable projects. For instance, have students perform simple filtration tests in different campus zones, such as probably Bell or some football field or near concrete pedestrian. Just by using a tin can and water, this project could be achieved. Another is to assign groups to adopt or observe a specific 5 by 5 meter patch of land inside the campus. As already mentioned earlier, some permeable paving, gravel, or bricks instead of cement is being used inside the campus. We would also like them to observe the retention planters, garden beds that are designed lower than the sidewalk to catch water. And as also mentioned earlier several times, the native species selection, we want them to research the local plants that act as the sponge for at least for our campus. And last is evaluating how campus green spaces can further be improved for more water retention. This can make the campus a tangible case study of policy environmental planning. It allows Chinese study students to see the direct practical application of an ecological civilization or Shengtai Wenming in a mini scale that they can actually manage. They move away from traditional memorization or class setting to enthusiastically checking, evaluating, or even designing possible solutions. I have to insert this in because I'm from SOS. Lastly, this on-campus field school proves that sustainable technology isn't about huge, extravagant, or far-fetched worldwide projects, but it's all about looking at our own backyard through scientific means and discovering realistic ways to build a greener and sustainable future. Let me just add, because my colleague Harvin Ang is not here right now. He is in class handling the mentioned science and technology course. We are doing this intersession. The field school can expand the perspectives of students that there need not be grand solutions to attain sustainability by looking at their surroundings and thinking about adaptive measures they could do. These are nature-based solutions already in their own way. At the same time, comparing the NBS in place in green smart cities of mainland China and Taiwan, students can have a perspective on what policies local governments can make their localities work for their people and the environment. Through a comparative approach, there are policies our Philippine cities can adopt and learn from. End of quote. And that's it. Salamat at magandang umaga po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sidney, for the very insightful presentation and talk. At this very juncture, may we invite other faculty if they are here. We understand that they are currently on their field research work, but if you are here present with us, you can actually open your microphone and give us an insight if you're willing to give a little bit of, to educate us here, the audience. But if none, we would like to thank all the reactors for the generous and thoughtful contributions for this webinar. From the presentations and reflections, we hear a strong common message, which is that climate resilience must be learned, practiced, and sustained across disciplines and communities. Today's discussion has shown that nature-based solutions are not simply technical interventions, they're also relationships with land, water, biodiversity, people, institutions, and the future. They require science, governance, inclusion, education, and long-term care. We now move on to the open forum of today's webinar. For audience, we now welcome your questions. Please post your questions in the Zoom chat box and indicate the speaker or panelist to whom your question is addressed. We will try to accommodate as many questions as possible within the remaining time. But as of this moment, since we can see right now questions on the chat box, can I ask Dr. Emma Porio to at least give us a little bit of an insights, the overview of what is this really ADMU field study about, or laboratory is all about. Dr. Emma?
No, I don't think I want to do that. I think they are all in my presentations and people can download it. I think we're live streamed and I think my presentations are there. But what I'd like to do is thank you very much, Father Jet, Theo, and Eman, wherever you are in Balataan, Daniel and Sydney and everyone who has spoken, and Sly especially. Thank you very much for your intellectual generosity and magnanimity. I think this is I find very inspired listening to what the Climate Action Plan wants to do and what the Biodiversity and Master Sustainability Plan to do. I think it's very exciting, and I think these things are very important inputs to the field schools and achieve their expected outputs. But as I always tell my students, nobody reads the plans unless you require them. I mean, I asked, for example, in my survey of local governments, in terms of how many of them have read the National Adaptation Plan that really identify the cross-cutting strategies for climate resilience and nature-based solutions. Very few, they will say, yes, I've heard it, yes, I've seen it, but whether they really read it closely and see what it means in their practice of planning for a climate disaster, it's not there. So in fact, I'd say that, I was listening to Sid. Sid, we got into this together because Sid said to me, I'm interested in the sponge city approach. And I said to him, the sponge city approach is really what our ancestors did in the olden days, make sure that the water flows to where it can flow and things like that. So I'm very grateful that, Sid and Daniel and, Father Jet and everyone has outlined everything what we have to do. I really think that, all I want to say really is that what do I really want? I mean, I always tell Father Jet, I'm old Father Jet, but every day I just pray, Lord, I don't know when you'll get me, but while I'm here, just give me the energy, the capacity, and the wisdom to do thy will. And I think Father Jet, Sid, Daniel, and Theo, and the others, I think at this moment in time where I don't, who knows, in tomorrow I might not wake up, but I'm thinking at this moment in time, the ADMU Field School is really, I'm really excited about it because I think it will make our Atenean really think closely in how they are a creature of God and the universe, and that they have been blessed with many things, and that we should put our talents, our charisma, and capacity to make this world a better place to be. I always tell my students, our consumption-driven lifestyle is putting our cities, our communities, and all of us at risk to flooding, to impacts of heat and drought, and lately the impacts of our earthquake because of how we allowed people to build in places they should not build, and to allow substandard things to things like that. But really, as I said to everyone, I tell my students, I want you to realize that we're born here, privileged to be born here, to live here and enjoy this earth, but a privilege also entail responsibility. As I always tell my students, I think we have appropriated the rights part of democracy, but not the responsibility and accountability for it. So I always say that I tell my students, like when I remember a few weeks ago, I met one of my former students, and I asked him what you're doing. He says, "Oh, I'm only teaching in a small school." I said, "That's fine. You're perfectly welcome to do your role in this earth, to educate, to inspire young people, to be responsible and accountable." And he said, "Yes, ma'am. I remember after I took your class 3 years ago, and you asked us to compute our carbon and water footprint. Since then, when I'm taking a shower, I close the faucet so that I will not be wasting water." So I said to myself, oh, if that one lecture has changed one behavior, that's enough. But what I'd like really to talk to my partners in this ADMU Field School is that we have a very privileged task to educate, to orient our students to be responsible citizen of this world. And it's not, I remember one of my friends, her niece was born during the pandemic time. And so when she came out at around, 2023, and she went out and she saw the banana. And he says, "What is the banana doing up in the tree?" Because since that she was born, she was only seeing the banana on the table. And I think that reaction is not really unusual for young people, especially those in the cities, because I think, like, for example, Abby and I had an alternative class on the campus tour, and I took charge of the ISO garden, and I was so surprised that the students did not know how the goyabano tree looks like. We cannot identify. So I really think that the field school will be able to introduce our students to what their environment is like, and what habits are we doing that is contributing to destruction. Therefore, our habits also should contribute to recovering the health of our environment and our own health. I always tell people that out there in between Hawaii and the California coast is a big plastic island, as big as the Philippines, as big as Texas. And if you look there, most of it comes from the Philippines because of the sachet and the like. So all I can say is that I'm very excited with this field school. It will allow us to really unite with our young people in terms of how we can be responsible, how our consumption habits are, responsible for the situation that, Father Jet says, growth, it's also results into waste. So 2 weeks ago, I was having a field work in Cebu River Lines, and I was so happy to meet an Oran Poor leader when he said, "Oh, Mom, remember 6 years ago you told us that there is no mineral in the plastic bottled mineral water. So from now on, I always bring up water jug." So I think all of us, I think our field school will allow us to do what is doable, actionable, and really just start in our own backyards or in our bathrooms, how we waste water or conserve water, how we create gardens. I always tell people now, What is the way to be happy? It's just to create a garden that you can tend, and a garden inside your heart. I always tell people in my village, oh, I plant things and I nurture my plants because plants do not talk back. And they nurture you, you put them water, they nurture you give flowers, give fruits. So I hope each of us will create a garden in our hearts and a garden in our midst. And maybe when when it's time for us to face our maker, then we can say we did our best in trying to nurture the earth and your other creations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emaporio, for the very insightful message to all of us. And I am seeing no questions raised from the audience for this morning. And as we come to the end of this program, allow me to call Dr. Ellie Mendoza Pascual, the Chair and Assistant Professor, Department of Environmental Science of the Ateneo de Manila University, to give us a concluding statement for this webinar. Dr. Ellie?
Hello, everyone. I just want to check, can you hear me loud and clear? Because
Yes.
it's
Yes, Dr. Ellie.
raining right now. So before giving the closing remarks, I want to shortly hijack first. So as part of the field school that is being launched right now, I would just want to share an interdisciplinary elective or course that is being offered by the department, which is the biocultural diversity, linking culture and environment. This is taught and will be taught in the future semesters by Ms. Don Satumbaga. I want to share the core pillars of this course, which is first the biological diversity, wherein students can learn the variety of all life forms, including ecosystems, species, genetic variations, and among other important concepts related to biodiversity and conservation. Also, one of the core pillars is cultural diversity, wherein the myriad ways in which human societies organize, understand, and interact with the world, including traditional ecological knowledge, beliefs, and practices. And the last core pillar would be the linguistic diversity, wherein languages carry the vocabulary of the environment, specific names of local flora, fauna. Paano ba natin pinapangalanan yung mga iba't ibang halaman at hayop natin sa paligid, and also weather patterns and land stewardship. So these are some of the things that our students can learn, being also a part of for example, what AIS is doing right now in terms of the biological action plan or biodiversity action plan in the university. So let me now give the closing remarks. So to our distinguished guests, speakers, faculty, and participants, again, good morning. So as we bring today's session to a close, we extend our deepest gratitude to everyone who joined us for the official launch of the Field School for Climate Resilient Communities. Today, we took a collective step forward in bridging science, community, and actionable sustainability. To our visionaries and speakers, thank you to Dr. Emma Porio for beautifully and passionately framing our vision and pathways for local climate action. Father Jet Villarin for outlining institutional leadership and climate action plans, and how to grow nicely, realizing the differentiated responsibilities. And to Mr. Tio Kakayan, representing the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, for sharing the university efforts and targets regarding BAP, and reminding us that biodiversity is the very foundation of our resilience. And to Mr. Sly Barameda Jr. for anchoring our discussion in urban resilience and what should be done through actionable agenda, research, and also shared responsibilities, accountabilities, and ownerships. So from our three speakers today, there are so many striking keywords na talagang nakakagising and really an eye-opener and an overall reminder to sustain what has been started beyond planning and even research. I would also like to thank our moderator for today, Mr. Josh Vidal. Thank you so much for all your efforts. And to our resource faculty and organizing partners, this initiative would not be possible without the expertise of our dedicated resource faculty and the collaborative spirit of our partner organizations. Thank you for your tireless work behind the scenes. So today we didn't just launch a field school, we reinforced a vital commitment, integrating nature-based solutions and safeguarding biodiversity that are no longer just choices. They are necessities for safeguarding our communities. Thank you all for your time, your passion, and your shared dedication to a more resilient future. Stay safe and have a wonderful day ahead. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eli, for the very good closing remarks. Before I will formally close this session, may call on Dr. Emma once again for giving us a few announcements, very important announcement to hear this morning. Dr. Emma?
Yeah, I would just like to again thank my partners. I'm very happy that we're partnering with Manila Observatory, with the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, the Environmental Science, and the Ateneo Innovation Center for the drone mapping, and the Rosita Giliong School of Social Sciences, Chinese Studies, Socioanthro, with the ISO, with the Arete, and many others outside here, and National Resilience Council and partners. I am really happy. I want to say and announce that this privilege of organizing the field school is really very timely and opportune, because the results of this field school will be presented in the COP17 on that biodiversity in Yerevan, Armenia on October 19 to 30. I think there are 8 global urban laboratories being are organized around NBS and biodiversity, and Ateneo de Manila Field School is one of those, of the 8. And it's because my coordinating lead author in EPCC is organizing that, and so they asked us if we can present. So I'd like to thank my partners and colleagues and all here in the Ateneo and outside for making this possible. And I would say of the 8 global urban laboratory, we're the only one focusing on integrating nature-based solutions and biodiversity inside a big campus. And then second, the one with Calawis and Mount Poro Nature Reserve. And the third one, which is really the very critical, because Payatas Biodiversity Park illustrates how the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy Plan is being localized by the Quezon City Climate and Sustainability Division, and really submitting a local biodiversity plan. So thank you. I really would like to say we will have others forum. I think I am planning with the Center for Positive Futures and another webinar on how high schools in the Center for Positive Futures in Taguig, in Montalban, in Puerto Princesa, and Rizal are also doing their own Laudato Si program and focusing on integrating nature-based solutions and biodiversity into their curriculum. And then also we will have another webinar on our partnership with the private sector. We'll just announce in our Facebook and other media channels. But basically, I want to thank everyone who is interested and participated here. I think integrating nature-based solutions is doable by everyone. You can do it as an individual, as a household head, as a community leader, in your own home, in your own gardens, in your own workplaces. And I hope we will be able to make a difference in terms of trying to make this world a cooler and calmer world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emma Porio, for the very good announcement. And I hope that everyone is able to hear that. And we are inviting you to join us in this mission. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and attention and participation for today's webinar. This has been Integrating Nature-Based Solutions and Biodiversity into Local Climate Action, the launching of the ADMU Field School for Climate Resilient Communities. Once again, I'm Joshua Vidal, and it has been a privilege to moderate today's session, and we wish you everyone a meaningful day ahead. Maraming salamat po, and good morning.